Welcome to my Career Book Club, where we explore real strategies for thriving in your career. My name is Julie Cullen, and in this podcast I get to indulge in two of my favourite pastimes. The first is reading books, and the second is sharing what I've learned. Each week I provide key learning points from some of my favourite career and personal development books and share them in the context of real, lived experiences combined with practical coaching tips to help you apply what you've learned. A couple of things before we get into today's episode. Firstly, I'd like to thank you for tuning in to the podcast every week. It means the world to me as you're helping me to achieve a dream of mine, so thank you for that. And secondly, if you enjoy these episodes, please hit the subscribe button and follow us on whichever app you're currently listening. It helps to build the visibility of this podcast on the platforms. I also invite you to get in touch with me if there are any books that you would like to hear featured on this podcast. I love a good recommendation, so just comment below or DM me on LinkedIn with your recommended reading so that I can deliver the content that you want to listen to. Thank you, and now into today's episode. The book we're reviewing this month is Chatter, The Voice in Our Head, Why It Matters and How to Harness It, in which psychologist Ethan Kross explores how this inner voice can be both a coach and a critic. If you've ever lain awake replaying an embarrassing moment or struggled to focus on a book because your mind was stuck on something upsetting, you're not alone. And I've been through this many times myself. That negative inner chatter that can totally consume our attention and make it really hard to do anything else. And in this month's book club, we're going to dedicate 4 episodes to exploring the lessons and tools that Ethan shares with us in his book and in his various writings. So Ethan's research shows that chatter, which is those repetitive negative thoughts, can really mess with our lives. Studies have found that intense inner criticism can cause students to score lower on exams, give performers stage fright, and undermine professionals during negotiations. In other words, that little voice can completely tank our confidence and our performance just when we need them most. And in the book, Ethan shares lots of great examples, which I will share with you over the course of the podcast episodes. But what they all show is how people's lives can be totally derailed by that overwhelming chatter in their minds. Even the top professionals can succumb. And he warns us that giving into this kind of disorientating self-talk can hurt our health, sink our mood, strain relationships, and cause us to fold under pressure. And I'm sure if you've ever experienced it yourself, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Now, the good news and the focus of our discussion in these podcast episodes is that we're not helpless against our inner critic. In fact, as Ethan emphasises, we already have tools to manage and harness our inner voice for good. So what I've done is taken those tools that he's shared with us in the book, and I've put them into categories, each one of which will be the subject of a podcast episode. So we've got the internal perspective, we've got an external perspective, we've got using reframes, and then physical practices. And today we're going to focus on the internal perspective. And I'll introduce 3 tools you can use to quiet the negative chatter and coach yourself through some of the challenges. These are science-backed strategies that can turn your inner voice from an enemy into an ally. Now, who wouldn't want that? And the 3 techniques we'll dive into today are distanced self-talk, imagine you're advising a friend, a favourite of mine, I use that one a lot in some of my programs, and then finally reinterpreting your body's stress response. I'll break down how each tool works, share some relatable examples, and show you how you can practice them in your own life. Okay, so let's get comfortable. And what I want you to do is I want you to think of a situation that's been causing you stress or anxiety. And as we go through these tools and these examples, I want you to think about how you could apply them to your own scenario. Okay? I want you to learn how to tame that chatter that goes on in your head and use your inner voice to help you rather than hurt you. Now, before we jump into the tools, let's quickly define what we mean by chatter. According to Ethan Kross, chatter is that cycle of negative thoughts and emotions that can trap us in a mental loop. It's when our mind starts replaying worries, fears, or regrets on repeat, and we can't shut it off. This often happens in high stress moments or when something triggers our anxiety. Exactly when we wish our inner voice would be helpful, it turns against us. And Ethan calls this the dark side of our inner voice. I love that. Instead of being a wise coach, our mind becomes an overbearing critic or a panicked fortune teller, imagining worst case scenarios. So why does this matter? Now, we've already mentioned that chatter can seriously sabotage us. And psychologists have found that when we get lost in that kind of negative self-talk, it's our brain's executive function, they call it. So the part that handles your focus, your problem solving, and your self-control, it gets totally impaired because this chatter gets in the way and basically hogs all your attention. So when you're stuck thinking, I'm going to fail, this is a disaster, it's really hard for your brain to concentrate on anything else. That's why you might choke under pressure, because your inner voice is too busy shouting doom and gloom and leaving you no room to think calmly. Okay, so that's what the problem is. The question is, what can we do about it? And that's what Ethan's book is all about. It's about finding solutions. In the book, there's about 26 different tools he shares to help turn down the volume on that chatter and regain control of our thoughts. And we're going to explore some of these over the course of the next 4 episodes. Some of these solutions can involve other people or tweaking your environment, like talking to a good friend or finding comfort in a routine or a tidy space. And we'll explore more on that in some of the future episodes. But many of the most powerful strategies are things you can do by yourself, in the privacy of your own mind. And we're going to focus on 3 of these internal tools today, so you can get started with using them straight away. Think of these techniques as ways to shift your perspective. Each one is about gaining a little mental distance from the chatter. Because when you're too immersed in your own thoughts, it's like being stuck in this storm. These tools help you step back from that and see things a bit more clearly, almost as if you were looking at someone else's problem, or reminding yourself that actually your mind and body can be on your side. And by doing that, you can short circuit the negative loop and engage your inner coach instead of your inner critic, because we all have one. We have a coach and we have a critic. Unfortunately, in these situations, the critic shouts a little bit louder. And what you're going to learn today is how to tap into that inner coach. So the first tool I want to talk about is what is called in the book, distanced self-talk. So distanced self-talk can feel a little bit strange, a little bit silly in the beginning, but there's a lot of powerful science behind it. In plain language, it basically means talking to yourself as if you were another person. So instead of using I when you're thinking or talking to yourself, you use your own name or you. Essentially, you refer to yourself in the third person. So for example, if I'm feeling anxious about a presentation, I might normally think, I can't do this. I'm so nervous. And when you switch to using distanced self-talk, you would switch that to something like, okay, Julie, you can do this. You've prepared. You'll be all right. Addressing yourself by name and saying you pulls you out of your own head. And it turns out that this subtle shift in language creates this kind of mental gap. It's like a healthy distance between you and these thoughts that are swirling through your mind. And what the research shows about this technique and how it helps you is because you relate to yourself more like you would to someone else. And usually, we're a lot kinder and more constructive towards others than to ourselves. So by using your name, it can feel like you're giving advice or encouragement to a friend rather than getting lost in your own insecurities. This third-person self-talk has been shown to reduce stress in the heat of the moment. And in fact, studies including brain scans have found that when people talk to themselves using their own name, their brain shows less activity in those regions associated with all that rumination and negative emotion. In other words, distant self-talk quiets down the brain's anxiety response, which helps you think more clearly under pressure. And not only does it feel supportive, it can actually improve your performance. And Ethan notes that people perform better under stress when they use distant self-talk, likely because it triggers wiser thinking and more emotional control. It's as if by stepping outside of yourself briefly, you gain the clarity of an outsider's perspective. You stop drowning in thoughts and start coaching yourself through the challenge. One way to remember this tool is to think of the times you've seen athletes or public figures do it. And there's an example of an NBA star called LeBron James, who is famous for referring to himself as LeBron in interviews and when discussing tough decisions or losses. And that's not an ego trip, it's a tactic which helps him to stay cool and objective. It's not uncommon for people to use that technique. And in fact, there's even examples in history, from Julius Caesar to modern politicians. All of them have been noted to using their own name when giving pep talks or in writings as a way of maintaining poise. So if it feels odd to say, "You've got this, Julie," you're in good company. Keep practicing. It will start to become more natural. So let's look at a personal illustrative story that I want you to consider. So imagine you have a big job interview coming up tomorrow, and this is one a lot of my clients struggle with, is prepping for interviews. And your inner voice starts doing that thing, oh, I'm going to mess up, I can't handle the pressure, I'm so nervous. And what you do when you're using this technique is to catch that thought and rephrase it as if you were talking to a friend. Use your name. So you might say, "Hey, Julie, look, you've prepared for this interview. You've got the skills, you've got the experience. You wouldn't have the interview if they didn't think you were a good fit. You can do this." Notice how saying that feels more encouraging. By calling yourself you or by name, you're tapping into a coaching mode. It's as if you've got me sitting on your shoulder. And if you're on your own, it's really helpful to actually do it out loud. So, "Julie, deep breath. You're ready for this. You've got this." So this distanced self-talk reduces the emotional overwhelm. It's almost like part of your mind steps in as a mentor, a cheerleader, or as I said, a coach on your shoulder, calming the panicked part of you. So Ethan's advice is to use this tool, especially when you're trying to work through a difficult experience. Tell yourself the way you'd tell a friend. Julie, you'll get through this. And I mentioned it may feel a bit awkward at first, but that's a small price to pay for achieving a clearer head. And the evidence suggests this practice leads to improved performance under stress, better thinking, and less negative emotion. So while it feels awkward at first, and while you may not be able to use it in all situations, if you start practicing it in situations where you can use it, then you'll start to see the influence of it in other situations. Distance yourself with your name and gently talk yourself through the problem. You'll probably find that your tone automatically becomes more reassuring and rational, just like you'd be to someone you care about. That's the magic of distanced self-talk. It shifts your perspective just enough to turn self-criticism into self-support. The second tool is very closely related and builds on that idea of treating yourself with the same kindness and wisdom you'd offer someone else. And the strategy is imagining you're giving advice to a friend, sometimes called the friend effect. It's linked to what researchers term the Solomon's paradox, which basically is just the tendency to be wiser about other people's problems rather than your own. Do you notice it? You're so much better at giving advice than you are at practicing what you preach. So the instruction here is simple. When you are in that situation where you're just stewing over your own worries, try and take a mental step back and ask yourself, if my friend was in this exact situation, what would I say to help them? Then, and this is key, take that advice and apply it to yourself. And I know this works because this is mentioned before, this is a practice that I use with my clients in some of my coaching programs. And it's helpful because we often have two standards of thinking, one for others, one for ourselves. We might readily tell a friend, you did your best, don't worry about it, you'll do better next time. But internally, we might be telling ourselves, you're such a failure, you always mess up. You speak to yourself differently than you would speak to a friend. So imagining it's your friend that's going through the problem tricks your mind into a more compassionate, big picture mindset, looking for solutions. You naturally will adopt a comforting, supporting tone, the kind that you use when you're trying to help someone that you care about. And by doing so, you activate this distanced reasoning. Ethan notes that this exercise is another way of achieving that psychological distance. You're viewing your predicament from the outside, which often brings more clarity and objectivity. In fact, this goes hand in hand with the distant self-talk that we just spoke about. And the research suggests that shifting perspective in this way helps people reason through problems more wisely, almost as if they were an outside advisor to themselves. So again, let's think about another situation. Say you're extremely nervous about giving a speech and your inner chatter is screaming, I'll make a fool of myself, it's going to go wrong, what are they going to think, I'm not ready for this. I've been through that loads of times personally. Now, what to do in that situation, what I've tried before, and it actually really does work, is just to pause and picture your closest friend is the one about to give this speech and feeling all these jitters. What would you genuinely say to them? You probably say things like, hey, you're going to be great. You know your stuff. You've got this. Even if you stumble, people will understand. I'm really proud of you. You've got this. Go for it. And you remind them of their strengths. And you maybe even shrug off the fear with a bit of humour or perspective. Right? That advice is pure gold. It helps people calm down. So now, if you can turn that around and give that pep talk to yourself, again, it feels a bit weird, but if you're literally telling yourself the same words, I know this is scary, but you're prepared and you can handle it, you'll be great, Even if it isn't perfect, it's okay. I'm proud of you for trying. By doing this, you're effectively, again, becoming your own mentor and friend in that moment. And this tool is powerful because it combats the irrational and harsh filter we often apply to ourselves. We're usually much more forgiving and understanding and constructive when supporting others. So by imagining advising a friend, we flip that switch for ourselves. And Ethan Kross includes this among his top inner voice tools, noting that it helps you consider your situation from a broader, less emotional, tangled viewpoint. It promotes what experts call wise reasoning. You start considering multiple angles in the bigger picture. The same way, you might remind a friend that one setback doesn't mean the end of the world. Okay, so research has shown that this kind of self-distancing can eliminate the usual bias that makes us worse at solving our own problems than others. In other words, you can be just as wise about your own life as you are about your friend's life, as long as you deliberately take that outside perspective and bring it into your internal perspective. So the next time you can find yourself stuck in chatter about a problem, maybe you're thinking, I can't believe this happened, I don't know what to do. Take a breath, take a pause. Envision that it's your friend coming to you with the same issue. What would you say to help them through it? I remember when I was going to do a presentation one time in front of some old colleagues I used to work with. And it was really nerve-wracking. And I could feel my nerves build up as the room started to fill. But I just reminded myself, the way I would remind a friend, that a lot of these people in the room were my friends. They were ex-colleagues. They were people I worked with who were specifically coming there to support me. And so I could use that external perspective and bring it internal. You might be amazed at how the tone of your internal voice changes from critical to comforting when you do this. It's like writing yourself an advice letter from your most caring and rational self. It's really effective in breaking that chatter loop. Our third tool is a little bit different. It's about what happens when chatter isn't just in your head, but also in your body. And I know you know what I'm talking about. That feeling, your stomach's doing flips, your heart's pounding out your chest, your palms are all sweaty. If, like me, your face has gone beetroot red. There could be lots of reasons why this happens, any kind of high pressure situation. And these physical symptoms often make us worse. We start panicking even more. We notice these bodily changes in our heart racing and think, oh no, I'm really nervous, this is terrible. And that thought, of course, just adds fuel to the anxious chatter. Your mind starts confirming, yes, this is a disaster. Yes, I'm panicking. And in turn, your body stays in that fight or flight mode. It becomes this vicious cycle. Stress causes the body reaction, and then noticing those reactions causes more mental stress and chatter. Now, Ethan Kross suggests that we break this cycle by reinterpreting what those bodily sensations mean. In other words, change the story you tell yourself about your physical response. Instead of seeing your racing heart and fast breathing as signs that you're about to fail or lose control, deliberately remind yourself that this is your body rising to the challenge. Those symptoms are actually an adaptive evolutionary reaction. Your body is pumping you up full of energy and focus so you can perform at your best when it counts. It's trying to help you, not hurt you. And Ethan points out, if we can reinterpret the butterflies in our stomach or the sweat on our brows as our body's way of gearing up, then these sensations become the source of strength rather than something to dread. Now, I have to admit, I've not quite mastered that yet. I'm still working on it. It's not easy. But there are some examples of how you can put this into practice. And so let's say your heart is thumping before an important meeting. When you notice that, instead of thinking, I'm so anxious, I need to calm down, try telling yourself, all right, my heart is pumping faster because it's getting more blood to my muscles and my brain. It's giving me the energy to do this. This is my body helping me be alert and ready. Bit of a mouthful. Just think, my body's pumping faster because it's trying to help me. It's trying to help me be more alert and more ready. Maybe you can feel those flutters in your stomach. Rather than, oh God, my tummy's doing buttons, something's wrong. Consciously reframe it. And think about, oh, these are exciting nerves. My body's anticipating something it cares about. By doing this, what you're trying to do is transform that fear into excitement or determination. And it sounds odd, I know it does, but research backs it up. People who can tell themselves they're excited instead of anxious before a stressful task actually perform better and feel more confident, because excitement is a positive spin on those same sensations. So those sensations that you feel, the butterflies, the beating heart, etc., you'll feel them when you're excited, you'll feel them when you're nervous. You know that. If you've ever been on a fairground ride, you know you get some of those sensations as well, but you're excited to get on it as well as feeling fear. So what you're trying to do here, and what the guidance is from the book, is what you're trying to do is normalize and even welcome your body's stress signals. So what Ethan reminds us is that things like rapid breathing, the pounding heart, the sweating palms, they're normal human responses. And so what you need to do is learn to teach your body to interpret them differently. So flip the script. So when the chatter starts interpreting those signals as doom, you need to change that to thinking your body is helping you and thanking your body for giving you that adrenaline to help you go and do what it is you need to do. As I say, this is a challenge. This is very difficult to apply. And so you want to find situations where you can practice this. The better you get at it, the more easily it will come to you. And I know myself, like, I can find myself, as I say, I feel the shaking, I feel the heartbeat, I feel the tummy. The worst thing for me is feeling the heat as my body starts to heat up, and I know my face is going to start going bright red. And so trying to challenge that energy as positive is difficult. And I'm still practicing it as well. And that's what you need to do. You need to practice it. The way Ethan describes this reframing is that when you feel those bodily symptoms of stress starting to kick in, he says, remind yourself that your bodily responses to stress is a natural reaction that improves your performance under high stress conditions. In other words, he's asking you to tell yourself a different story. In a simpler way of saying it, these are jitters that are here to help, not sabotage. And by doing that, you cut off that feedback loop where the physical stress is fueling that mental chatter. You go from I'm panicking to I'm pumped up and ready to go. It can make a huge difference in how you experience a challenging moment. Okay, to wrap up, let's summarise the 3 tools that I spoke about today. The distance self-talk, coach yourself in the third person, use your name or you when talking to yourself. This creates that psychological distance and helps dial down the stress. For example, you can handle this, Julie, instead of I can't do this. Research shows that this simple shift reduces brain activity that is linked to the rumination that's going on in your head and boosts performance under pressure. The second was imagine advising a friend. So be your own friend. If you're stuck in negative self-talk, pause and ask what advice you'd give a close friend in the same situation. Then apply that advice to yourself. That perspective helps you think more objectively and compassionately. Okay, we tend to be wiser and kinder when we're solving someone else's problems rather than our own. And so that's what this tool is doing is tapping into that wisdom. And if it helps, record yourself, play it back. That can be a really helpful exercise as well. And then finally, learn to reinterpret your body response. Flip the script on that physical stress. When you notice butterflies, a racing heart, or sweaty palms, remind yourself that these are normal reactions meant to help, not hurt. Instead of I'm nervous, tell yourself I'm excited and energized. Viewing your body's stress signals as fuel for optimal performance can calm down that mental chatter and even help improve how you perform under stress. So in essence, all 3 techniques are about gaining perspective and breaking that immediate fusion with negative thoughts. They help you step outside the whirlwind that's going on inside your head and take a more balanced view. So by talking to yourself like a friend, using your own name, your language, imaginary advice, by reframing your jitters as helpful, you're training your inner voice to be more of a coach and less of a critic. Before we wrap up, it's worth noting that these tools are just a fraction of the many strategies that Ethan Kross highlights in the book. There are other approaches, from leveraging your environment, rituals you can use, and engaging other people, and we're going to explore more of those in the next coming episodes. But I chose these 3 today because you can do them anytime, anywhere, privately in your own mind. You can start practicing them now. They're easy to remember, proven to be effective, and so they can help you calm down that chatter that goes on in your head. I encourage you to practice these strategies over the next few days. The next time you catch yourself in a negative thought loop, try using distant self-talk. Gently say to yourself, all right, Julie, let's figure this out. Notice how it immediately feels like someone has your back, that someone is you. Or when you feel overwhelmed, ask, what would I tell my best friend if they felt this way? You might be surprised at how wise and reassuring you can be. And if you're gearing up for a nerve-wracking situation, take those butterflies in stride. Say, this is my body, get me ready to do something important. By normalising it, you rob the fear of its sting. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Career Book Club. If the episode resonated with you, please share it with a friend or colleague who you think needs to hear it. In the next episode, we're going to continue exploring more of the tools and techniques shared by Ethan Kross in his book, Chatter, The Voice in Our Head, Why It Matters, and How to Harness It. If you've been inspired by this episode, please remember there's a link to the book on Amazon in the show notes below. It's an affiliate link and it helps to fund the continuation of these podcast episodes. And if you've enjoyed this episode and want to hear more, make sure you don't miss the next one by subscribing to the podcast to follow me for more real strategies to create a career you love. And remember, if you have a book recommendation that you'd like to be featured on this podcast, please get in touch. My details will be in the show notes. Bye for now.